What is there to say about the hydrothermal wastes? The deepest known region here on Europa, and just beyond it, the Eye of Europa, a rather odd gravitational anomaly, but that is a subject for another space-time. Upon first glance, the hydrothermal wastes would seem to be nothing more than a nigh uninhabitable wasteland, barren and toxic, strewn with the corpses of many a submarine and submariner. But this is only really from the human perspective, which shows us a world of minerals and resources to exploit from a dead landscape. And perhaps rightfully so, but Europa is a far cry from the remanential longing of Earth and our own ancestral biomes. To life on Europa, this environment is actually far more verdant in life than the European ridge could ever be. Compared to the other biomes, the largest groups of fauna on this moon can be found at these depths. Crawlers can be found in groups that number as large as 16 individuals, and commonly they are found to be husked at these depths in large numbers. As well, large thresher swarms can be found at these depths, hosting 2 bone threshers in a pod, with a large contingent of tiger threshers to guide them. And in addition to this, watchers are more commonly found among these groups, acting as an additional eye and support in exchange for the protection of the threshers. Mud raptors can also be found at these depths, though surprisingly their numbers seem to be lower than that of the other regions. Perhaps traveling in smaller groups is more preferable, especially when there are other predators in large number. Or perhaps this region is simply too poor in both safety and nutrients to support many large mud raptor nests. Though the same cannot be said about hammerheads, crawlers, and spinelings, often traveling in large groups, accompanied by the females of their species, as it is quite common to see 2 large crawler broodmothers and a pregnant matriarch among their respective groups. Though I am still unsure as to what combination of spinelings that are male and female. Inversely, this is also true of molochs, with 2 standard molochs in a herd, with a black moloch accompanying them, which I believe to be mostly, if not entirely, responsible for the submarine corpses strewn throughout the hydrothermal depths, as the molochs themselves are often quite the deteriorating roadblock for many a prospector's submarine. Though, these aren't the only creatures to be found down here, as more recently, longer-lived husks hidden away in the corpses of metal and old prospecting colonies have undergone some form of metamorphosis, either only partly changing or completely shedding their old skins, and then stitching their very biology together with various discarded limbs and other parts of other fauna here on Europa, creating the husk chimera, a truly dangerous and honestly troublesome creature. Though there is more to this region than just its larger fauna. Due to the concentrated tectonic activity, these waters are beyond both nutrient and chemical rich, though it is also these conditions in combination of its warm and often toxic waters that only a slim amount of hardy and extreme life forms have evolved to make use of it. Among some of the most numerous flora that exist in this biome, in both abundance and as a troublesome obstacle, sonar flora seem to populate nearly every crevice in the hydrothermal wastes. Perhaps, though, aside from the most well-known flora, exist a bleak array of fauna and or flora that seem to lead a rather heated existence. Among this first set of smaller fauna are a handful of bleached white coral, though unlike the ones found on Earth, some of these specimens have odd openings and large pores that seem to sometimes contain eyes that stare out at you, and others seem to contain a scaled appearance that almost seems metallic in nature. I feel like these coral groupings are almost a possible collection of large shells that have now been appropriated and inhabited by something else, something that is more individual rather than endlessly built upon each other like the corals of Earth. Often neighboring these pseudocorals are large colonies of white, thick-shelled clams huddled together on large outcroppings tightly bound to each other. I speculate they've evolved this tactic to deal with the more turbulent waters of the hydrothermal wastes, binding themselves together in a larger column using a very strong adhesive, or perhaps tentacles. In comparison to this tougher-shelled fauna, a variety of what you could call bristleworms and amorphous sponges cling to the walls of this biome. The bristleworms seem to live in large colonies, spreading themselves themselves out in thick arrays to gather and filter feed on the large amounts of detritus that floats through these depths, and if anything happens to wander by, they will quickly retreat into their hardened homes to avoid potential predation. Though not all creatures at these depths rely on filter feeding or predation, and the spinelings, although more mainly the viperlings, feed themselves and other spinelings through chemosynthesis, and this region couldn't be a more perfect setup for this process. Viperlings will make daily trips down into the abyss, swarming around the active hydrothermal vents, gathering what hydrogen sulfide they can before making a hasty retreat back up into the tunnels, and will soon use a unique acidic secretion to draw in nutrients from the constantly shifting rock faces of the wastes. And it's among these shifting rocks that sit hidden gems, often locked away like the rest of Europa's caves, as they snake their way through nearly every point of the hydrothermal wastes. Though, unlike other caves, those in the wastes are rather hypnotic, and this speaks of both the appearance of the caves themselves and the riches that are packed within these caves, being packed with incendium and fulgurium veins, though one must exercise caution in such a place, as these caves have a certain effect on divers that venture inside, with whispers from the outside. The shrieks of crawlers that aren't there are among one of the few effects of the fauna in those caves have. A hallucinogenic effect, though it isn't any chemical medium that makes contact with the divers, as this affects those in even the thickest and most protective of diver suits. The mushroom caves of the waste glow a barely visible bluish-purple light, and it is this light that causes these hallucinations, though through what mechanism fully escapes me. As well, it makes it really hard to study anything in here without wondering what just brushed past my leg and whether it was really there or not. This has also allowed an array of bioluminescent corals and armored tube worms to grow unabated in these caves, with the hallucination-imbued lighting keeping many predators away. Though this doesn't seem to keep the more large, complex fauna away like the mantis and the ever-lost random spineling found zooming around the caves. This myriad of elements has basically stalled any real human habitation of the hydrothermal wastes, save for the hardy criminal enterprise that set up deep in these depths, trying to avoid any reach of the Coalition or others that would impose any form of order. But both the Coalition and Separatists are vying for control of these deep waters, as more than anywhere else, alien ruins are found attached to nearly every tunnel down here, holding a bounty of unknown technologies that could perhaps make one the true ruler of Europa. And the alien ruins are more than worth it to these two factions, as for every colony that fails, 3 more crop up with their very fates left to the environment itself, and to the abyssal life that seems to rise up out of the depths. Far more so than the other biomes, almost as if something is pushing them out of their hunting grounds and forcing them to find any amount of solace within the tunnels of Europa. Without a doubt, there are many things deep in the abyss we have never seen, behemoths of unimaginable size and terror, and whatever the hell the latter eats patches of flesh from. Hopefully it doesn't bring them up here looking for where their favorite food went and find humans instead. And of course there is the ever mysterious Eye of Europa, a gravitational anomaly dug deep into Europa, guarded by an alien megastructure, and a scientist who no one can quite seem to make sense of, but those are both topics for another time.